November 30th, 2014, from the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis, Missouri. It was the Oakland Raiders at the St. Louis Rams. St. Louis won the toss and they elected it at first. The Raiders would take over first. They would go 3-and-out on their first possession. They would punt the ball to St. Louis, who would now take over on their own 41 with about 14 minutes left in the first. But on 2nd and 4 from the 40, Hill would find Austin for a 5-yard pass that would make it a first down for the Rams on the Oakland 35. And on 1st and 10, Tre Mason would run 35 yards into the... Actually, he caught a 35-yard pass from Shaun Hill, and that made it 7-0 Rams over the Raiders. So now the Raiders would get the ball, and they would go 3-and-out for the second consecutive possession. Now the Rams would take over with about 10.5 minutes left in the first. They had it on their own 22. And on 2nd and 2 from the 30, Hill went to Britt. He picked up 13 yards in the first down at the St. Louis 43. And on 2nd and 10 from the 43, Hill went to Bailey. He picked up 16 yards in the first down in Oakland territory at the 41. Hill then went to Bailey for a 34-yard reception, and it was now 1st and goal for the Rams on the 7. Tre Mason ran for 5 yards, and then Hill ended up running in from 2 yards out for the touchdown that would make it St. Louis 14, Oakland 0. So now the Raiders would get the ball for the 3rd time, and for the 3rd time in this game, they would go 3-and-out. And so now the Rams would take over on their own 39 after the punt, with about 5.5 minutes left in the first. And on 1st and 15 from the 34, Hill hit Bailey for a 26-yard pass that made a first down in Oakland territory at the 40. And then on 3rd and 8 from the 38, Hill went to Bailey for a 16-yard pass that made a first down on the 22. Mason then ran for 4 yards, and on 2nd and 6 from the 18, Tavon Austin ended up running on an end around 18 yards to the end zone for the touchdown that made it St. Louis 21, Oakland 0. So now the Raiders would get the ball for the 4th time in this game, and they finally ended up picking up a first down. When on 3rd and 1 from the 23, Derek Carr hit Jones for a 1-yard pass that made a first down on the 24. And on 2nd and 6 from the 28, McFadden ran for 4 yards, and that brought the first to a close. And after 1 quarter of play, the score was St. Louis 21, Oakland 0. So now to begin the second quarter, the Raiders had the ball on their own 32. It was 3rd and 2, and Derek Carr went to Tompkins. It was an incomplete pass, but a defensive holding penalty made it a first down on the Oakland 37 for the Raiders. Now on 2nd and 1, actually Derek Carr would now go to Jones-Drew. He picked up 9. It would be 2nd and 1 from the 46. Jones-Drew then ran for 13 yards in the first down, bringing it to the St. Louis 41. Then on 3rd and 1 from the 32, McFadden got stopped for no gain, and a false start would end up bringing out the punting unit. So now the Rams would take over, and they would have the ball on their own 11-yard line, and they ended up with an 89-yard touchdown run by Tre Mason as he took it and he was off to the races, and it was now St. Louis 28, Oakland 0. So now the Raiders got the ball with about 11 minutes left in the second quarter. They were faced with a 3rd and 11. Derek Carr dropped back to pass. He was intercepted by Gaines. So now St. Louis would take over in Oakland territory on the Oakland 23 with about 9.5 minutes left before halftime. And Mason would run for 10 yards on first down. Then Zach Stacy ran for 4 yards. And on 3rd and 6 from the 9, an incomplete pass, but there was a defensive holding penalty. So now it was 1st and goal on the 4 for the Rams. And Shaun Hill found Harkey for a 4-yard touchdown pass that would make the score St. Louis 35, Oakland 0. So now the Raiders got the ball with about 8 minutes left before halftime. They had it on their own 20. And on 3rd and 8 from the 22, Derek Carr was intercepted for the second consecutive possession, this time by Johnson. So now the Rams took over in the red zone as they had the ball on the Oakland 13 with about 7.5 minutes left before halftime. They would end up stalling, and Shaun Hill actually got sacked for a 7-yard loss by Tuck. And so Greg Zuerlein would come out to attempt the 38-yard field goal. It was up, it was good, and the score was now St. Louis 38, Oakland 0. So now the Raiders would get the ball with about 5.5 minutes left before halftime. They had it on their own 4-yard line as they were in the shadow of their own end zone. And on 3rd and 8 from the 6, Derek Carr hit Tompkins for an 18-yard pass in the first down that brought the ball to the 24. They would end up punting it after 12 plays on the possession from the St. Louis 47. As now the Rams got the ball. Hill took a knee and this game went to halftime. So now at halftime, the score was St. Louis 38, Oakland 0. And to begin the second half, the Rams would get the ball first, and they would actually go 3 and out on their first possession of the second half. And the Raiders would take over with about 13 and a half minutes left in the third quarter. They had it on their own 24. They picked up a first down, but after 5 plays, they would end up punting it from their own 42. So now the Rams would get the ball on their own 15 with about 11 minutes left in the third. They would go 3 and out. So now the Raiders would get the ball back with less than 10 minutes on the clock in the third, and they would go 3 and out as well as they punted it back to St. Louis. And St. Louis now went 3 and out, and they would punt it back to Oakland as these two teams just kept going back and forth 3 and out. So the Raiders had the ball with 7 minutes left in the third. They had it on their own 17, and on 3rd and 7 from the 20, Derek Carr went to Jones. He picked up 10 yards in the first down that brought the ball to the Oakland 30. They then ran the ball. Reece picked up 8 yards, but got blew up by Hayes. He forced the fumble. It was recovered by McLeod. And so now the Rams had the ball on the Oakland 34 with about 5 minutes left in the third, but they went 3 and out. And so now they would punt the ball from the 42 to Oakland. Oakland now took over on their own 8-yard line with about 4 minutes left in the third as they were up against their own end zone. Derek Carr then went to Butler. He picked up 17 yards in the first down that brought the ball to the 25. And on 2nd and 4 from the 46, Derek Carr would end up throwing an incomplete pass, but there was illegal contact called on the defense. It would be a first down for the Raiders on the St. Louis 49. Derek Carr then got sacked by Robert Quinn for an 8-yard loss. Then on 2nd and 18, Carr went to McFadden. He picked up 13 yards, and now it's 3rd and 5, and an incomplete pass would make it 4th and 5. The Raiders would elect to go for it. There ended up being an offensive pass interference called. It was declined as the Raiders turned the ball over on downs. So now the Rams would take over on their own 44. Zach Stacy ran for 11 yards in the first down that brought the ball across midfield into the Raiders 45 as the third quarter came to a close. So after 3 quarters of play, the score was St. Louis 38, Oakland 0. It's now to open up the fourth quarter. The Rams had the ball on the Oakland 45. It was first down. Tavon Austin ran for 6 yards, and Zach Stacy ran for a yard. It was now 3rd and 3 on the 38. And a defensive pass interference call against the defense would end up making it 1st and goal on the 10 for the Rams. Stacy then ran for 2 yards. And on 2nd and goal from the 8, Tre Mason ran it in from 8 yards out. And it was now St. Louis 45, Oakland 0. So now the Raiders would get the ball with about 12 and a half minutes left in this game. They had it on their own 20. They would end up picking up some first downs and moving into St. Louis territory, but they were faced with a 3rd and 3 on the St. Louis 25. Matt Shaub was in the game at this point. He'd come in earlier in the drive, and he was sacked on 3rd and 3 by Robert Quinn. Quinn forced the fumble, and it was recovered by Long. So now the Rams took over on their own 36. They went 3 and out, and they punted it back to Oakland. And Oakland would now take over with about 7.5 minutes left in this game. They had the ball on their own 20. They picked up a first down with a pass from Shaub to Tompkins for 10 yards. It brought it to the 30, and then Shaub went to Reece. He picked up 13 yards, and it was a first down on the 43. But then on 2nd and 10, Shaub was sacked by Donald as the rookie dropped him for an 8-yard loss. So now on 3rd and 18 from the 35 out of the shotgun, Shaub ended up going for Tompkins, but it was intercepted by Johnson, and Johnson returned it 43 yards for the pick 6 and the touchdown that made it St. Louis 52, Oakland 0. So now the Raiders would get the ball on their own 14 with about a little less than 5.5 minutes left on the clock. They would go 3 and out, and they punted it to St. Louis, who would take over at midfield on their own 43. They would go 3 and out, and they punted it back to the Raiders. There was 2 minutes left in the game. And the Raiders ended up bringing the game to a close. The final score, St. Louis 52, Oakland 0, as the Rams shut out the Raiders. And with the victory, the Rams are now 5-7 on the season, 3-3 at home. The Raiders now 1-11, 0-6 on the road. Shaun Hill was 13 for 22 in this game with 183 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. He also had 1 yard off of 2 carries rushing. Derek Carr was 24 for 39 with 173 yards passing and 2 interceptions. He had 1 yard off of 1 carry. Shaub came in. He was 5 for 9, 57 yards and an interception as well. The game's leading rusher was Tre Mason. He had 14 carries for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns. He actually had that long for 89. And the leading receiver in this game was also for the Rams. It was Stedman Bailey. He had 5 receptions for 100 yards. Tre Mason also had 3 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown receiving to go with his 2 touchdowns running. So 3 total touchdowns for Tre Mason in this game. And the leading rusher for the Raiders was McFadden. He had 27 yards off 11 carries. Reece had 4 carries for 12 yards. He was also the leading receiver for Oakland with 6 receptions for 48 yards for the fullback, who was an All-Pro last year. And on defense in this game, it was a tie. Both teams ended up having a tackler with 7 tackles. Michael Brockers for the Rams had 7 tackles, one of which was for a loss. And for the Raiders, Sal Moore had 7 tackles as well. The Raiders had 1 sack. That was Justin Tuck, who had the lone sack for the Raiders. But the Rams had 6 sacks in this game, as William Hayes had 1 sack, and so did Chris Long. They each had 1 sack, and also the rookie Aaron Donald had 1 sack as well. And Robert Quinn had 3 sacks in this game to go along with his 5 tackles. And the Rams had 3 interceptions. Johnson had 2 interceptions, and Gaines had 1. So the Rams just blow out the Raiders as they shut them out, and they put up 50+ with the final score in this game: St. Louis 52, Oakland 0.